When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that 2 days from now the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Meanwhile, the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered together in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and to kill him. But they said, not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people. Now, while Jesus was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. When the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a very large sum, and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble this woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Truly, I tell you, whenever this good news is proclaimed anywhere in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, his disciples came to him saying, "Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" And he replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I will eat the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" So they did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. And when it was evening, he took his place among the 12. And while they were eating, he said to them, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed, and began to say to him one after the other, not I, surely not I, Lord." And he replied, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me." Now, the Son of Man goes as it is written for him. But woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born at all. Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." And Jesus said, "You have said so." And while they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples, saying, "Take, eat, this is my body." And then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. And I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the wine until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all desert me. You will all become deserters because of me this night. As it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But when I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." But Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will never desert you." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, Peter, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said to him, no, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And so said all the disciples. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there to pray. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to become grieved and agitated. And then he said to them, I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me. And then going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and he prayed, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet, not what I want, but what you want. He came and found the disciples sleeping. And he said to Peter, so you could not stay awake with me even 1 hour. Stay awake and pray that you might not come into the time of trial. Indeed, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away for the 2nd time and prayed. Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink from it, your will be done. And again he came and found the disciples sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for a 3rd time, saying the same words. And then he came back and said to his disciples, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is handed over and betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Look, my betrayer is at hand. And while he was still speaking, Judas, who had betrayed him, arrived. And with him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, the one that I will kiss is the man. Arrest him. And at once Judas went up to Jesus and greeted him. Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. And Jesus said, friend, do what you are here to do. And then they came and they laid hands on Jesus and they took him away and arrested him. Then one of those who was with Jesus put his hand on his sword and drew it and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And Jesus said to him, put that sword back in its place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will send me at once more than 12 legions of angels? But then how would the Scriptures be fulfilled, which say it must happen in this way? And at that hour he said to the crowds, do you come out to me with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has come to pass, so that the Scriptures from the prophets might be fulfilled. And then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Those who arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the chief priests and elders had gathered. But Peter was following at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going in, he sat there with the guards to see how this would all end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none. even though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said, I heard this fellow say, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days. And the high priest stood up and said, Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you? But Jesus remained silent. Then the high priest said to him, I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus said, You say so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his clothes and said, He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict? And they answered, He deserves to die. And they spat on his face and struck him. And some slapped him, saying, Prophesy to us, O Messiah. Who is it that struck you? Now, remember, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came up to him and said, You also were with Jesus from Galilee. But he denied it before them all, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And when he went out on the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she told some of the bystanders, This man was with Jesus of Nazareth. Again, he denied it with an oath, I do not know the man. A little while later, some of the bystanders came to Peter and said, Certainly, you were one of them. Your accent betrays you. And then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, I do not know the man. And at that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said. Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly.